All right, so this is the Ascension of Babylon. What we do here is we talk about the occult, we talk about spiritual self-development and self-development in general. If that's your thing and you're new here, absolutely subscribe to the channel, and let's just get right into the topic of discussion. I'm going to be talking about why we experience betrayal, why we form relationships with people that turn out to, not necessarily be the healthiest, and we're getting stabbed in the back or we're getting betrayed. And I think the first place that I truly want to start is that we are all very powerful creators. We are creator beings that are constantly creating reality to an extent where we actually create everything that has ever happened to us, but we're largely unconscious of how we're creating, and we're largely unconscious that we are creating our reality. A majority of human beings exist in a space of separation, and one way that this separation takes place is the person thinks that they think that what is happening to them is not their own creation. They don't understand that everything is what you can think to be a holographic projection of different parts of the self and different energetic patterns that a lot of the time are going to be stored in the unconscious or in the subconscious. So with that being said, when we experience a betrayal, this is going to be rooted in an underlying pattern that we're most likely not aware of, that is probably associated with our early childhood, and we're reliving certain feeling states and certain experiences that we have been through in the past through the medium of the betrayal that we went through. And there really is a deeper science to how all of this functions, and that's exactly what I'm going to be breaking down. Now, because a lot of us experience early childhood trauma that we don't know how to process, we go through what is known as fragmentation within our psyche. And oftentimes, this fragmentation is going to take the form of certain belief systems, perceptions, and identities that we carry with us and that we identify with as being us, and that we filter our experience through. And it's oftentimes these identities that are carrying the belief system or carrying the perception, usually perceptions and belief systems that are very limiting because they're a part of a protective program that we create to bypass the trauma and the emotions that are associated with it that we didn't know how to process when this trauma began building up its, we could say, accumulative energetic resonance inside of us. So you can imagine we fragment, think about fragments, right? Like these little shards or these little parts, just for the visualization here. And these fragments collectively create a wall inside of us that is like a dam. And that dam is meant to block out what is on the other side of that. So that's going to be painful memories that we've disassociated from. That's going to be a negatively charged emotional resonance. And that's going to be the trauma that we've experienced. And in fact, we started experiencing the trauma from a young age, and then just because of the way things typically manifest, when we got that initial trauma-based energetic charge in our system, it now started creating experiences that are holding that energetic charge that just re-traumatized us and traumatized us even more. So now fragmentation is continually taking place, and we create this entire shell for ourselves to experience and filter our reality through, and that shell is not actually who we are. So most people on our planet today are very, very shelled. They think that they're being authentic, but they're not necessarily being truly authentic because they haven't worked through and integrated their trauma and the fragmentations that trauma is essentially causing to become manifest, to protect the person from what they don't have the capacity and they don't have the tools to process. Once again, starting in early childhood, and then there's going to be other experiences that manifest from that initial trauma-based energetic charge. So this shell is going to be comprised of identities, sub-personalities, belief systems, perceptions, and things of that nature. The you that you think you are, but you're not necessarily. So when a lot of people are creating relationships, they're creating relationships from the shell. They're creating relationships not from the not from the authentic self, but from the false self, from a version of the self that is not authentic. And anything that is not authentic is going to at some point falter. It's not a sturdy foundation to build a relationship on. So when certain things start coming up, which is naturally going to happen when certain emotions start coming up or certain things start getting expressed, the foundation that relationship or relationships or friendships are built on is going to start getting compromised because it was never an authentic foundation to begin with. And the nature of all things in reality is to evolve. So you might be actually creating these friendships as an extension of a protective program inside of your psyche that you're not necessarily aware of. Meaning you're using the relationship to bypass and to distract you from what is actually going on inside. But meanwhile, on a deeper subconscious level, you're actually always trying to give yourself an opportunity to dissolve the protective program. So you're going to create conflicts and you're going to create certain catalysts that manifest in your life experience to kind of shake you up and wake you up a little bit so you can realize that you're not creating your reality from an authentic space. And then you have the opportunity to go through a dissolving of those protective programs. And as you're doing this, remember, the protective program creates like this wall. As you're doing this, that wall is breaking down, and then those suppressed emotional resonances that are also aiding in creating the reality as well on a deeper subconscious level are now coming up to the surface to be felt. And if you're authentically feeling these emotions, the emotions that you didn't authentically feel when you went through whatever traumas you went through, as you're feeling them, you're setting in motion a healing momentum and you're releasing that suppressed resonance from your body and from your energetic field. So once again, even though you might be creating the friendship as an extension of a protective program that's existing inside your psyche, on a subconscious level, you're actually externalizing your trauma that's going to take the form of certain happenings in your environment that are actually holding that trauma-based energetic charge because whatever you're going through is rooted and is an extension of that trauma that is inside of you. Meaning this trauma is going to come through people that you have connections with. It's going to begin surfacing certain responses and surfacing certain things to take place within that relationship, which then get projected onto you in the form of things like betrayal, in the form of things like heartbreak, in the form of things like maybe manipulation or certain kinds of behavior that are very destructive, things of that nature. And this is to wake you up to the energy that you're creating your reality with, because you are not creating reality from an authentic space And you not only need to see these shadow parts of yourself that you're using the relationship to bypass, you need a catalyst to cause you to step away from a part of that protective program that you're using to bypass the trauma, or you're going to remain in a timeline where you're creating relationships that are not authentic to who and what you truly are. Think about it. If everything was good and everything was always comfortable, as humans, we would never evolve, and we would never take a second look at the way we're creating our reality, because we associate feeling good with authentic, and that's not always the case. These protective programs in our psyche can actually give us a dopamine release, and can essentially release energy that gives us what we perceive to be pleasure or happiness, even if that happiness is rooted in an illusion. So we have to create some type of catalyst on a subconscious level to make us feel what we were always feeling the whole time since we were little children, and we went through that initial trauma with our caregivers, with most likely for you, this is going to be mom and dad. The anger, the betrayal, the anxiety, the fear, that is always going to replay itself in our physical reality until we address it, until we process it, and until we release it. But if we're creating these friendships that are just an extension of a protective program, then we're bypassing that fear. And this is why on a subconscious level, that we could say catalyst will come through the friendship or the bond or the relationship in the form of something like a betrayal. And in a sense, your reality is mirroring back to you the fact that you betrayed yourself a long time ago, as you kept identifying with these protective programs inside your psyche. You have let yourself down, and therefore you had to create a reality where someone else let you down, so you could eventually become aware of the fact that you are not stepping to the plate as an authentic version of you. You were stepping to the plate and creating relationships as an artificial version of yourself. Essentially, in the easiest way I can explain it, or just being real blunt, you were being fake. You were not honoring your process in the way that you could. So on a subconscious level, even though your conscious self might not want to create this, but on a subconscious level, you created the experience so you can have a pattern interruption, and you can have the opportunity to take a step back and to start looking at how you're creating your reality, and as well so you can start processing these suppressed emotional resonances inside of you that are rooted in these different traumas that that you've experienced in your life. So the betrayal itself is also meant to act as a trigger to make you feel what you have been feeling the whole entire time. And as you honor this feeling process, rather than trying to bypass it with substance abuse, certain friendships, going out at certain times, whatever it is, you start releasing that energy from the body and from the energetic field in general, and then you're going to move out of resonance with people that are going to betray you, because there has to be parts of you that are in energetic resonance with that in order for that to even take place in the first place. And this goes back to where the creator of our reality, where the source of everything we experience. So how is it that we're creating our reality? Are we creating it from a protective program? Are we creating it from a very limiting belief system? Are we creating it from suppressed emotional resonance and unhealed trauma? Or are we truly creating our reality from a more so authentic space? When we are, this is when our relationships with people are going to mirror back that authenticity. And that doesn't mean that everything's perfect. That doesn't mean that there's not disagreements and things of that nature. That can just be a part of being human. And if you think of a battery, there's two sides, to create power, the positive and the negative. So there's always going to be negative, but on an overall level, your reality will start to mirror back to you your authentic self, and not just a protective program, what I like to call the false self, and not just your trauma that keeps replaying itself because you haven't really gone through the deeper healing process and the deeper releasing in relation to that trauma. So if you're experiencing betrayal, there's a reason for it. You're not a victim to this. Yes, you want to hold the other person accountable, because if they're betraying you, they're not being the most authentic versions of themselves. But right now, it's not about them, and it's not necessarily about what they did. It's about why you created the experience and what you're going to do to stop creating experiences where you're being betrayed by people.